pleasure to be in front of you today. I'm going to be talking about fearless imagination. Fearless imagination. If someone was to ask me what is fearless imagination, I would take a minute to give you an answer. Just because it's such an abstract terminology. The only way you could possibly explain it is by breaking it down. So let's break it down. Fearless imagination consists of two key words: fear and imagination. Fear is something we've all experienced. All speakers present here today are all experiencing various types of fear, including me. But when someone tells you to define imagination and creativity, it just becomes a little bit more harder. This is because imagination and creativity's definition is not guided by a clear definition, but rather by perspectives. Let me give you an example to clear it out. A professor in Harvard asked his students, "Do you think you're creative?" 99% of people raised their hands. They thought they were creative. Why? Because they compared themselves to each other and believed that they were creative to a certain extent. However, the remaining 1% confused the professor, so he asked them, "Why do you think you're not creative?" They said, "Because we're not as creative as the rich." They compared themselves to the epitome of creativity and thus defined themselves as not being creative. No matter what you think creativity and imagination's definition is, you can easily say that there is a link between fear and imagination. In essence, fearless imagination is imagination that takes risks. It's not guided by fear. But let me simplify it. Me, along with many other grade 12 students, are applying for universities. Some of these universities call students for interviews. Whenever you go for an interview, there's always 3 interviewees present. Among these interviewees are 2 who ask questions like, "Why do you want to join this university?" or "Why do you think you're capable of this university?" But one of the interviewees just sits there and listens. Now that person is not so impressed by you that he or she doesn't feel the need to ask you any question. But instead, that person is a psychologist. A psychologist judges you on 2 things: your ability to be an ambivert. An ambivert is an individual who shows introvert-like qualities in introvert-like situations and extrovert-like qualities in extrovert-like situations. The second thing they judge you on is your ability to be a fearless imaginer. How is fearless imagination applied in the real world? Let's link it to something that's a big part of our lives: movies. For slightly older people present in this room, let's talk about a movie released in the 1960s. 2001, A Space Odyssey. 2001, A Space Odyssey discussed ideas that have become very redundant in today's world, but at that point of time, they were considered revolutionary. Let's pan back to the 1960s, where there were only landline phones present. There were no mobile phones. Yet that movie incorporated mobile phones, tablets, and an omnipotent technology that a human could communicate with, and it would answer questions and provide information. At that point of time, this movie was considered ludicrous for introducing this because they believed that this was not possible. How could we have a phone without a wire? How could we have a robot answering our questions? Yet 40 years later, a handheld phone introduced this omnipotent technology. This handheld phone was called the iPhone 4S, and it introduced the omnipotent technology that we now call Cortana, Iris, and Siri. Let's introduce another movie that's more applicable to the younger crowd. Avatar. When James Cameron, a legendary director, he had just made Titanic, when he introduced this movie to the producers, they flat out rejected it. Why? Even though he was so credible, they rejected him because the idea seemed so weird. It did not apply theoretically. He said something like this: let's make a movie where a guy is using virtual reality to control blue aliens and living with other blue aliens. It sounds so weird. You too would reject this idea. Virtual reality, friends, did not exist at that point of time. Yet he still thought about it. He was not a great computer science student, or a teacher, or a professor, but he just used his imagination and thought, what if? Now, almost all producers rejected this idea, and thus he applied his own money, even though he had buckets of it, and made a movie that turned out to be the highest grossing movie in the world. This movie was overtaken recently, on July 20th, 2019, by a movie that I would consider the pinnacle of fearless imagination. You would have to be living under a rock if you've not at least heard of this movie. This movie is Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame uses the idea of linking storylines, plot lines, and loopholes over the course of 10 years and making a movie. Along with this, it also introduces the idea of time travel. Now, time travel has been explored in Endgame as well as a great movie called Back to the Future. But it has been proven false by physics numerous times. As my physics tutor explained to me, you could go ahead in time, but there's no way to go back. Yet if you think about it, look at the pattern. Came in movies, and then it was invented. Couldn't you say that there's a chance that one day time travel too will exist? Of course there is. All we need to do is to put our fear aside and take risks. Risks are essential to fearless imagination. A study by Wharton School said that 95% of people would rather take jobs that offer a safe income rather than take a job that requires risks and fearless imagination just because it guarantees pay. The new generation has to expand their minds and start taking risks. We have to remember that imagination and creativity is not something you buy, it's something you have. But without fear, imagination is something that teaches you not to walk, but to fly. Thank you.